You till 1 today. I hope you can keep me company. We've had quite a lot on the show in terms of music and guests, and it's no different. We're going to keep moving forward. I'm joined by Patricia McKenna, Seanad Trinity by-election candidate, and we're just going to have a conversation around the whole idea of militarism and war and the current crisis in Europe. Good afternoon, first of all, Patricia. You're very welcome.
Good afternoon, Lisa. Thank you.
Nice to talk to you. Tell me a little bit about, I suppose, your own perspective on all of this.
Yes, well, I mean, what I find quite, I suppose, frustrating is that while it's welcome that there's huge criticism of what Russia is doing in the Ukraine, I still find it very difficult to accept that we have ignored other conflicts around the world for a long, long time, like, for example, Yemen, Afghanistan, Iraq. And if I could just take Yemen, for example, I mean, Yemen has been on for about 7 years now, and there's the most recent UN report said 377,000 people have died by the end of 2021. That's huge, and 70% of those are children under the age of 5. So I'll just give an example. So there's concern with a lot of people that if, for example, and Yemen is a situation where America and other countries, even within the EU, have been arming Saudi Arabia to the teeth to perpetrate these huge crimes against the Yemen people. And it seems like it's only certain wars are focused on, perhaps maybe because Ukraine is closer to home. It makes people worry, but I also think it's because it's Russia that's the bad boy here, whereas in other situations it's America and some of our so-called allies. And I believe we have to treat everybody equally and all conflicts equally, because the people of Yemen, the people of Syria, the people of Afghanistan, Iraq and all these other countries deserve the right to life the same as everybody else does. And if people could just, who are concerned about what is happening in Ukraine, and it is, as I said, it is in breach of international law. It is a crime against the people of the Ukraine, and we're all very aware of that. But that is the same thing, and indeed, in some situations like in Yemen, it's even worse at this stage.
Of course.
We really need to focus, pardon?
Of course, indeed. I'm aware very much of the Yemen situation. Yeah. I mean, it's not a case of displacement alone. It's a starvation at its worst level. I mean, I also think I have to just interrupt a little bit, Patricia, in the sense that I really believe that the media have a huge role to play in this, because they tend to go for the soft targets when it comes to coverage. I mean, you've got a country like Ukraine. It's very accessible. It's very easy for them to go in and film mass suffering. They're able to share that with the world, and as we know, the newspapers are full of the images that are emotive, and yet there are countries that are not getting any coverage at all in terms of media, and it begs the question, who decides what policy is when it comes to the coverage of stories by the media? Because let's be honest, if the media chooses to go in and cover, you will get mass support from the public with the kind of images that are coming back from Ukraine. I do take your point 100% about Yemen, but I think it's more than governments and people. I think the media have a huge role to play.
And you're right on that. I mean, the media have a huge role and a huge responsibility, in relation to highlighting conflicts around the world. And there seems to be a reluctance by a lot of the mainstream media, and your radio station doing this is extremely important, but you don't get a lot of very balanced debates on the mainstream media, and you really have to get that. And any listener who's watching, I would ask them to go back. You can get it on YouTube. She was an Irish journalist called Maggie O'Kane, an award-winning journalist. She highlighted, and it's on YouTube, it's 1996, it's called, I think it's called, it's Storm anyway, and it's saying how to tell lies and win wars. And it's really worth watching, because that was for the first Iraq war, and it shows how, and she said herself, how the media go along with things, and they shouldn't, and she highlights the hypocrisy, and indeed the way not even just the people of Iraq were treated and murdered, but also even the soldiers, American soldiers, and how the veterans were treated and completely discarded and used and abused. So we really need journalists to go out and highlight that. There's very few real independent journalists at the moment. One of the few I can think that stands out and how he keeps it going, I don't know, is John Pilger. Yeah. But he's amazing. He just keeps going, and he hasn't, I suppose, lost his desire to keep on informing the public what's going on.
And I think no, sorry to interrupt you, but I think as well it's important to bear in mind that when you look at privatisation and you look at big business buying media, which is essentially what is happening a lot, the likes of a community radio station, the likes of community organisations in general, they are still a very independent voice, and even though they mightn't be taken very seriously by a lot of the bigger media moguls, so to speak, you have a much better chance of independent coverage of stories from outlets like ourselves, because we're not fueled by the philanthropists, etc., who are essentially controlling what information we're fed. And the only reason I'm throwing that in there is I remember years ago as a student, I was working for a professor who was writing a book on human rights coverage by the media, and it was the time of El Salvador, the Sandinistas, all that kind of thing, and my job was to research the stories and then see where they were covered in the media. And it was before social media, so to speak. I mean, this war is very accessible on the social media format, so you get the pictures and everything else. But in those days, back in the late 80s, it was down to pure research. And I was horrified how little some of the catastrophes were publicised in the national medias. And I'm talking about world news and everything. And it made me realise that actually, what we think is happening in the world is coloured very much by media coverage. And if the media is not independent, you are then in a situation where you are finding media is driven by the interests of commercialism. And anyway, I'll stop ranting. Back to you.
I totally agree with you, and I think that's one of our biggest problems. And yes, and you put the nail on the head in relation to small, local, independent stations. So that's the only ones that are actually giving a balance. A balanced coverage and without fear of repercussion, and that's extremely important. And I hope that the mainstream media might take a leaf out of all that you said as best as this is concerned.
Yeah, well, I mean, unfortunately, I think they won't, being honest, but we do have to encourage and support our community organisations. That's really where I'm coming from, and community radio has such an important role to play in that context. Regarding NATO, for instance, and some people are arguing that Ireland should be getting involved, lose its neutrality status, so to speak. I know you have very strong views on that. Tell me a little bit more.
Well, I suppose there's two issues here. One is NATO and the other is the European Union.
Yeah.
On the one hand, the vast majority of the member states of the European Union are part of NATO. We're not part of NATO, but we're far from neutral. And we just talk about neutrality and what it really means for Ireland, because Ireland has a huge opportunity in relation to trying to use its neutrality positively, and we have done that in the past. Our peacekeepers were seen as neutral. They were seen as, not been aligned with the big superpowers, so they could be much more effective. We got a seat recently at the UN, and that seat was down to the fact one of the reasons we were supported for that seat was because we were seen as neutral. Now, I firmly believe that in relation to the current crisis, we have squandered that opportunity that was provided to us on the basis of neutrality, because we have Simon Coveney et al. Taking a very non-neutral position. Now, I'm not saying that we have to be neutral and stand aside and say that we should do this. Right, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we have the opportunity, because our Constitution says it, and the vast majority of people believe this, I think, that we have to find solutions that are non-military. There's no point, as they say, pouring more and more arms and weapons into Ukraine, because it's killing people all the time, and we had the opportunity. Yet you could hear people like Simon Coveney calling the ambassador, for example, to Russia, a liar, when everybody knows that ambassadors say what they're told to say by the powers to be from their own country. And calling for its expulsion is the one thing you need in a situation like this, is to keep that line of communication open so that we can have negotiation and we can try and find a peaceful solution. But our government have basically gone down the road of supporting completely and without hesitation the Americans and NATO. And if you look at what's happening now in relation to the European Union, we've said this. I've been campaigning when I was in the European Parliament, and long before that, in relation to Irish neutrality and about the militarisation of Europe. I was accused of being, as Jackie Healy-Rae would, or what Michael Healy-Rae would say, I was accused of being away with the berries. But it was true, and you can actually see it happening now, and there's no debate in relation to what's happening in Europe on militarisation. I saw from the start where the arms industries in Europe have got very frustrated by the fact that at the end of the Cold War, the arms industries were making very little money. They were bemoaning the fact that there was no profit from them as such,
Sure.
and they wanted to boost the arms industry. They got their way. They got the European Defence Agency set up, and that's part of the EU treaties now, and we voted for that, and the government and the main political parties said that we were scaremongering. It's now there, but what's also is lack of debate and transparency. For the last number of months, there has been extremely important debates going on and meetings in Europe in relation to the EU rapid deployment capacity and in relation to what's called strategic compass. To cut it short, it's all about the further militarisation of Europe.
Yeah.
And our ministers have gone over there, they've gone along with everything that's going on. They have not debated it in the dawn. They have not made it public knowledge as such. They haven't gone out of the way to let the public know what's going on. Now, if that was, say, for example, money coming from Europe, you can bet your bottom dollar that the ministers would be saying to the vast majority of people out here, oh, well, look what we've got you out in Europe. But yet, when it comes to them going along with the militarisation of Europe, they're keeping it quiet and under wraps.
Yeah.
They're not saying anything about it. And there's a very crucial meeting on at the moment in relation to this, and it's one of the key things it's about is boosting the EU arms industry. Now, if you look at there's figures in relation to that. From 2017, there was about 90 million spent in relation to military EU defence funds, and from 2019 to 2020, it was about 500 million. Now, from 2021 to 2027, it's gone from 500 million to 5.3 billion. And this is development money for the development of arms. Now, is this what we want to be supporting in Ireland in relation to going along with the EU militarisation? And people might say, well, it's separate from NATO, but there's a clear link between NATO and the EU militarisation. The two of them will be compatible with each other and will work with each other. And the other thing is that when we were campaigning against this further militarisation of Europe, one of the things we mentioned was this permanent structural cooperation within the EU treaties that was provided. And we said, oh, that's got nothing to do with militarisation. And I'm just going to quote from the recent document that came out yesterday. It says, it will make full use of permanent structured cooperation and the European Defence Fund to jointly develop cutting-edge military capabilities and invest in technological innovation for defence, and the creators of a new defence innovation hub within the European Defence Agency. And the European Defence Agency, in my opinion, is another name for the European arms industries, because I watched this development. I tried to stop it at the time, but there was very little support. And that's what we're going along with. And our government and our ministers are saying absolutely nothing on this. They're not informing the public. And Ukraine is being used as many people will say, you never waste a good crisis. They're using Ukraine to railroad forward with all of the military aspects that they wanted. The government, Fine Gael have always been pro-military. Fianna Fáil pretended to be on the other side, but they seem to just have gone along with it all now at this stage. And there's nobody really speaking out in the dawn on this issue in relation to what's happening. There are a few voices, but very, very few. But the key voices that we should be hearing from are our ministers and our government, and including in that a party that I used to be a member of, is the Green Party. They are going along with this. Why are these people who supposedly support peace and neutrality and non-violence not saying something and informing the public on what's going on? It's absolutely a scandal, a national scandal.
Yes, and I'm not surprised, if I'm being brutally honest with you, probably from my early experiences as a young student. It looks to me that we're being dragged into military alliances that most Irish people are not even aware of. And I mean, I had a discussion this morning with Malcolm Byrne, a Fianna Fáil senator, and he was basically making the point that there's a need for a TV leaders debate on Ireland's foreign policy. And, you know, within that would be Ireland's military foreign policy as well. But the public debate would force transparency, which I think we're all agreed on.
That's true. And you see, well, if you look at, I mean, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, they all talk about what they can do on this war, but there's a huge amount of hypocrisy going on. On the one hand, they're trying to split words in relation to what's defence mean of foreign policy, and you have to look at the whole thing in context. But like, there are a lot of things Ireland are doing that are just, like, for example, you've got when they talk about what we can do in relation to the Ukraine and Russia, the Tax Consolidation Act of 1997 provides in section 110 special purpose vehicles. It says tax neutrality for corporations. Now, the recent report from the central bank says that, in relation to 60% of the 35.5 billion assets held in Irish, these special purpose accounts, whatever you want to call them, are used as Russian. And then we're talking about, hold on here, how are we helping if we're actually, on one hand, saying we're going to support sanctions, and on the other hand, where it really could matter, we're doing nothing about it. The other thing is we don't take an independent... yesterday it was announced that Madeleine Albright, the former American politician, had died, and you get statements from all these heads of state, including her own, saying that she was a champion of human rights and democracy. I think we have to hold these people to account, dead or alive, in relation to what their legacy is. Now, Madeleine Albright, everybody was coming out yesterday with all these statements about, how wonderful a woman she was, a champion for human rights and, a wonderful woman for progress. This is a woman who publicly said that 500,000 dead Iraqi children were a price worth paying. Now, that, in my opinion, is not the type of person that you should be singing their praises about. And I think we need to take an independent position instead of just kowtowing to those that we think are more powerful than ourselves. And I believe that when we were more independent and neutral, we did do that. We did have this courage, I suppose, to stand up. Ireland was one of the instigators of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, that's in relation to proliferation of nuclear weapons. And when we see Ireland doing this at the moment, our politicians, in my opinion, have let us down so badly and the country down so badly. Now they're using this, the Ukrainian crisis, to try and hoodwink the public into thinking somehow that our neutrality, if we weren't neutral, we could make a difference and things would be different. That's not the case. All they're talking about is getting into bed with those that they think are the big boys. You look at Europe, for example, and the militarisation of Europe. Two of the key countries pushing ahead with this are Germany and France. In 2020, it was revealed that France was still supplying weapons to Putin's Russia. And yet, at the same time, these are the people we want to cooperate with. You look at the arms that's going from EU to Saudi Arabia. You look to perpetrate crimes against the Yemenis people. So we have to take a position, I think, and unfortunately, because, and as you said, this is a key issue, the way that we're lack of proper independent media and proper media analysis of what's going on, the public are very subtly hoodwinked into believing that somehow we're doing the right thing. And I believe that the vast majority of Irish people at the moment who might be reconsidering whether we should be neutral or not are not doing it because they've got some sort of vested interest in the arms industry or militarisation. They're doing it for the best, with the best intentions. But unfortunately, they're not getting the full picture.
And I think we'll have to leave it there, Patricia. You're very passionate about what you're talking about, and that's very refreshing, I have to tell you. Can I just say that by way of final comment, I'll hand that to you.
Well, I would just say I would like to thank you very much for the opportunity to try and get across to the public in relation to what's going on. And I think it's extremely important. The point you made is so vital. We do need independent media that will provide balanced debate on issues that the public can make their own mind up. And you're fulfilling a very important role. So,
well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for acknowledging that. I really appreciate it. And have a good day. Keep up the good work and don't give up. All right. Thank you, Patricia. Cheerio. Bye bye. The wonderful Patricia McKenna there, and Seanad's Trinity by-election candidate, and just speaking about the whole subject of militarism and war, and it's just a balanced view, and that's all any of us can do here on the media.